It's stage 17, the final day in the Alps, and more Alps on it than you can shake a spoke tightening tool at. It's rare that a mountain stage with a downhill finish has any real impact on the overall standings, but the big names who've been to recce these mountains, and that's most of them, reckon they're hard enough to change the race. So a massive day's climbing in prospect. But before we get on with it, a couple of pieces of news, starting with the most important, which is a medical update on Jens Voigt after his crash yesterday. Now, we didn't run these pictures because they look so serious for Jens. We feared for what it was we'd be showing you. Certainly as the Tour's medical team immobilised him on the road, it looked as though he'd suffered serious head or perhaps spinal injuries. One Saxo Bank rider, Nicky Sorensen, came back up the descent to check on his teammate, but wasn't allowed close enough to see him. From the pictures of the crash, Jens didn't seem to have had time to put his hands out, but obviously he had, because they were cut to ribbons and needed stitches. But his vital signs were good, he was moving his legs, and once he'd been taken off the mountain by helicopter to hospital, the worst of his injuries were confirmed as a broken cheekbone and heavy concussion. We're closing in on 3,000 kilometres now on the Tour, just under 170 today, setting out from yesterday's finish in Le Grand Bornand. 5 mountains to climb, 4 of them first category, starting with the Cormet de Roseland, just under 2,000 metres. Then it's the Col de Cézille, topping out at 1,650. But the climb most riders fear is a mountain making its first appearance on a Tour de France itinerary. The Col de Rome, only 1,300 metres, but punishingly steep. That leads straight to the Col de la Colombière and a 15-kilometre downhill run to the finish at Le Grand Bornand. Well, the stage profile is hard enough today without thunderstorms, but there was intermittent heavy rain to deal with for the peloton as it left Bourg Saint-Maurice. And barely had the stage started than Cadel Evans was at the back of it. He finished yesterday muttering about dark reasons for his lack of success this year. He seems to be unhappy with what he feels is his team's lack of support, and he was looking for all the world like a man about to climb off. Up ahead of him, the current King of the Mountains leader, Franco Pellizotti, led over the first climb of the day, the Cormet de Roseland, to extend his lead in that competition in a group about 1:15 ahead of the main field. Now, the polka dot jersey leading over a climb is one thing. The green jersey is a slightly rarer sight, but he's a genuine hard man to Hushovd, and not content to take his 18-point lead over Mark Cavendish onto the Champs-Élysées on Sunday. He joined the breakaway group and then rode away from it on the Col de Cézille, all so that he could get to the day's first intermediate sprint and take the 6 points that would put the green jersey competition pretty much beyond doubt, barring accidents. Talking of which, Tour was doing a one-footed tap dance in the wet on the descent after the sprint just to try and stay upright. He managed it rather brilliantly in the end, although a couple of men in the chase bunch behind didn't. Amit Chiruka and almost inevitably Denis Menchov, who seems never to pass up an opportunity to crash, he went down twice. Now, behind the chase group, Saxo Bank had taken over the pacemaking from Team Astana at the front of the yellow jersey group, and Bradley Wiggins, director sportif, was in no doubt why.
They're very worried about Wiggo. They know he hasn't shown any weaknesses on any of the climbs so far, so they're going to make the race very hard on these upcoming climbs. And the pressure's on them to offload Wiggo, because at the moment he has shown no weakness, and we've just got to play our cards. And we're expecting an attack from Andy Schleck on the second last climb. It's the hardest climb of the day. So we know what's coming up, and Bradley and Christian are more than ready.
Now, one last thing before the race hit the Col de Rome. Tour Hushovd survived out front long enough to take 6 points at the second sprint of the day and pretty much tie up the green jersey competition. Once the race reached the key climb of the stage, though, he was quickly spat out of the back. As we join it, one man has attacked off the front. Quick Step's Carlos Barredo. Behind him, all the favourites except Cadel Evans are together, but that's about to change.
Well, as we start this big climb of the Col de Rome, the move has come almost immediately from Carlos Sastre. Sastre, everyone has said he's anonymous. Well, he's not today.
Sastre started the move. These are desperate moments by Carlos Sastre. 2 climbs left in the Alps, and then the Mont Ventoux. He won't ride well in the time trial tomorrow. Amazingly, nobody's going to counter the move of Carlos Sastre just now, because he is just that little bit too far behind overall. He's lost 3 minutes and 52 seconds. and they won't rush straight out of the blocks at him. They're planning their own move today. Did you see the set face then on Andy Schleck, just waiting in third place?
He is waiting for halfway up this climb, I think, Phil, to make the move, because he knows at half distance on this climb it really kicks up to become extremely steep at 12.5%.
Lance Armstrong, 1 week before the tour started, came to look at this climb because it was the one climb he did not know. He says it is extremely hard. It starts very steep, and for sure he expects attacks coming from the Schlecks today. This is the back of the peloton now, who are starting to crack. Host Postuma's gone. Nicholas Roach is easing off the back here. This is a cruel strongman's climb now, and it looks as though we're starting to lose one or two of the Astana. Was that Claude that just went by?
Zubeldia.
Oh, thank you. Thank heavens for that. Zubeldia just slipping off the back. There also, number 61 is Mikel Astalosa, the winner yesterday.
Christophe Lemavelle, the best placed French rider at the start of the race, and he was hanging on to 7th place overall. He's in difficulty now. We always expected this to be the big showdown. Sastre going by his teammate Thor Hushovd. Big smile on his face there.
Well, he's got to get home, and that's all now. 36 kilometres to ride, and up another big mountain after this, as we rush up now to see this race being spread all down the Col de Rome. We'll get back to the front when we can, but there is going to be some huge pushing up front now.
Well, there's no attack coming there from Andy Schleck, because Andy Schleck seems to be disappearing away. No, there he is. He's just come back up to his brother Frank.
It's still status quo. There's nobody accelerated away from the front. They've got the camera there of Carlos Sastre to jump up to. Astana have got no need to attack. It's up to the others to attack. Wiggins, I don't think, will attack if he can avoid it.
It was Andy Schleck in difficulty there, Phil. You can see the riders from Liquigas slipping backwards now. They're up to the wheel of Carlos Sastre. Sitting in third position is Lance Armstrong, right in front of his teammate Alberto Contador, and Wiggins is still in contact.
Well, Bradley Wiggins is living up to everything at the moment. This is a desperate move here by last year's winner, Carlos Sastre, but he's going absolutely nowhere at the moment. The tempo by Astana and Contador. Wiggins is there as well, as riders are beginning to crack. And this is Nibali who's going now. And he was the rider second in the white jersey and riding high. This hill is hurting him. It's a different hill to the others.
A little bit further up the road, we've still got Carlos Barreda, but he's now been joined by Jürgen van den Broek.
And looking very, very strong indeed. It's been a terrible, terrible day for Van den Broek's team captain, Cadel Evans. He's not been able to match the pace, but Van den Broek's having a second good day here, as Carlos Barreda is still holding him just about.
Sastre will not give up, but the fact that Thomas Voeckler can stay on his wheel there, Phil, would indicate to me that he's not going as fast as he has in previous years. Vincenzo Nibali needs to try and stay in contact if he wants to try and get himself the white jersey tomorrow.
Well, it looks as though Barredo just hit the wall there and has been catapulted away, as Jürgen van den Broek, one of the sensations in the mountains this year, could find himself in a stronger position on the team after his ride now in this year's Tour de France.
Moving forward here is Andy Schleck at the back of the group. There you can see number 51, Christian van der Velde, still in contact. So too is Bradley Wiggins.
I would suggest Andy Schleck is also having a bad day here, unless he's waiting to sprint, but he's watching groups come and go. But Schleck is still there. He's on the side of van der Velde, and he's on the back wheel of Astana. But he's sitting a long way back down the group. Not a good sign, I don't think.
Well, slowly but surely, Phil, they're catching back to the group of riders who were the early morning breakaway, and they're going to zoom past here over on the left-hand side. Frank Schleck is having a better day than his brother here this afternoon, and Armstrong rides up into second place. Wiggins is cruising over there on the left-hand side, and I don't think they've managed to put him into difficulty just yet, but Astana is still very strong with a great number of riders there.
Well, Frank Schleck was the expected first man to attack. He's lifted the pace, but he's lost all the teammates now. They've been blown away, except Andy, who is just off to the left there now. And this is the move by Frank Schleck. This is the first move of the day by Saxo. There's a quick reaction here, and look who's on his back wheel. Armstrong is having none of this. He knows this climb. Straight away, Contador is there, and Wiggins is in shooting distance.
Well, they're all getting a little bit confused as they've caught up this group of riders who were the early morning breakaway. Frank Schleck is in much better form this afternoon than his brother Andy. He will be surprised to see the response coming from Armstrong there. There is Alberto Contador just covering the moves, waiting to see if there will be a move come from Andy Schleck.
Well, it's good to see that Kim Kirk and Maxime Montfort, he's from the front group. He's just here in this group at the moment. Here is the move by Andy Schleck. Contador is locked into the back wheel. He doesn't have to attack him, just ride with him. We're looking at the #1 of last year here, and that's Sastre passed straight through the group as the counter-attacks have started. Pelazzotti also.
Well, these riders have been in the breakaway. Carlos Sastre tried in the early kilometres to see what he could do, see whether he could distance anybody. Andreas Kloden is there on the wheel of Andy Schleck, and it looks just now as if they've managed to get the gap between themselves and Wiggins. Wiggins is getting help there from Christian van der Velde, who is trying to pace him back into this race.
Well,
van der Velde's going backwards.
Van der Velde's being dropped, but these are desperate moments here because Bradley Wiggins here has been joined by Lance Armstrong, and another rider is kicking again. This is the next one. Look at that. Armstrong's watching, waiting and going. Schleck can do nothing about this. Armstrong, what a rider he is. And now kicking straight after him, he's got to do it himself now, is Bradley Wiggins.
Well, Wiggins really waited for that. He was looking, he was under control, he was being led a fraction there by Dave Zabriskie. Then all of a sudden he saw the acceleration come from Frank Schleck. They really are throwing this around this afternoon, but Wiggins on the defensive has ridden himself back up to this leading group.
He's just got to say to himself, if I get over the top with you guys, you're all dead tomorrow in the time trial, because that's back to my game.
Kind of forgot, didn't we? There's a lone leader up the road. Jürgen van der Broek is still leading this bike race, Phil, by 17 seconds.
They're all going to be around him. We are still 5 kilometres from the top of this very, very difficult Col de Rome, and we go on to the Col de la Colombia next. Well, 5 kilometres to go it is now for Jürgen van den Berg, but he's going to have company for sure, because Frank Schleck is throwing everything he's got here. He is the carrot. He's not the expected man to break away. Number 31 is the one that is supposed to finish it off, but I'm not so sure he's riding that well just now.
Well, the man they want to get rid of is number 58, Bradley Wiggins, Garmin Slipstream. But so far, these climbers have done nothing to unhitch the Brit, who has responded to every one of their attacks by slowly clawing his way back into the move. Andy Schleck goes again.
Well, that was unlucky for Andy, because Contador was looking round at the time he made the move, and he was smoothly onto his Slipstream. This is a marvellous move. Andreas Kloden is the first rider to bridge the gap. Then Lance has waited for the reaction from brother Frank and has taken his back wheel. Now Wiggins again on the defensive, but he's going forward.
He's cracked. Wiggins is cracked, and Armstrong and Frank Schleck are sitting on his wheel now. He's got to try and control himself, Bradley Wiggins.
And now Wiggins has got to control himself, as Paul says. He's not got to panic here. He's got the greatest climbers in the world just ahead of him. Oh, and he was looking round, he almost went into the back of Armstrong. He wasn't expecting that, and he's missed the move by Frank.
Well, Frank went straight over the top. He's still got great legs this afternoon. Andy's looking over his shoulder. He probably knows that brother Frank is coming across the gap, and this is a good move for the Schleck brothers this afternoon.
We are looking at the face now of Bradley Wiggins here, being escorted by Lance Armstrong and driven forward by his faithful team captain there, Christian van der Velde, who is setting a pace which might yet bring them back into action. Sastre has now dropped away from the leaderboard, and he will stay that way for the rest of the tour, I fear.
This is amazing. We're looking at the 2 strongest teams here, Phil. 2 riders from Saxo Bank, 2 riders from Team Astana, and they're combining their efforts here to try and restructure the overall classification at the 2009 Tour.
Well, the Schlecks are just trying to get rid of that man in yellow, but he doesn't even look under pressure. He's a little bit more serious now, I must confess, Alberto Contador. But Schleck has got to get rid of him, and that's a much more difficult situation. Overall, Andy Schleck is 2 minutes 26 seconds behind Alberto Contador. There are no time bonuses in the Tour de France this year. It's real time. Yep. He's going to make 2:26 over that man in yellow. It doesn't look as though it's going to happen to me. Lance Armstrong, I think, is just holding his place here. I don't think he's too stressed. He might wait for the Col de Colombia and launch an attack to try and catch his mates, as he did yesterday on the last climb of the day. But I take my hats off to Christian van der Velde. Somewhere he's dug so deep down to find the legs to bring him back up to Bradley Wiggins, knowing he needs him. Right in the distance there are the leaders of the Tour de France today. We still have to go downhill. There'll be risks taken on the descent now, so they get onto the Col de Colombia perhaps all together again. All down to Andy Schleck now, and he can't lift it that extra to try and shake off these boys. Frank is still mastering the pace as well. Kloden, for me, I'd be very worried about him at the moment, because he's in a perfect position to ride away alone on the next climb. There's the British flag there. Keep waving, because Bradley Wiggins is only about 35 seconds back. 30 kilometres, that's about 19 miles to the finish. But we've still got the Colombia yet. Bradley Wiggins, I think, is absolutely mastering himself here. He's not in the red zone, the pain debt. He's still working, he's still firing. He can close this down. They're not gaining enough on him right now, that's for sure.
There's a move here, and it's Armstrong who's gone.
And he's taking Wiggins, and that won't go on. He'll have to desist if he's going to pull Wiggins across the gap.
Well, he couldn't get rid of Bradley Wiggins, and I think once he's noticed he hasn't got the gap on Wiggins, he may well swing off and allow Wiggins to come through to the front.
Good job, bud. Very good job, Brad. Stay with Lance. Stay with Lance, we go.
Lance has settled back into his tempo now, and in fact Wiggins looks as though he's content to sit there just for the moment, but he's helping him get closer to the boys. 1 kilometre to the top, and then it's going to be some chase off this mountain.
It's going to be a dramatic chase off this mountain. As soon as Armstrong knew that he hadn't got rid of Wiggins, you see, he wanted to get across on his own. He doesn't want to take the British rider across because he knows how important it is to Alberto Contador to also have a buffer over this man, Bradley Wiggins.
Nibali's climbing back in as well as they slowed down. Contador knows he's only got to watch and wait. He hasn't got to do anything. And the presence of Cloden is the trump card, because Cloden can run away here and push Andy Schleck further back as they come to the last part of the day.
Yeah, Cloden started the day in 4th place in the overall standings at 2 minutes and 17 seconds behind Alberto Contador, and he could be the trump card. As you can see, Frank Schleck digging deep as they come up to the summit of this climb. And a little bit further down, this is the group, and again it looks as if Christian van der Velde has recovered and dragged himself back into this race, probably dragged himself and turned himself inside out to come and help Bradley Wiggins.
To me, that indicates that Lance turned off and Wiggins couldn't raise it anymore, so he got back on. Christian van der Velde, Nibali also back on. These are the 4 riders. The leaders are over the top, already zipping up the jerseys for the plunge to the bottom of the Col de la Colombière, the last climb of the day. Wiggins, I think, would have expected to have been in this position, so he's now got to fight himself out of it. The clock's counting as they head up towards the summit. Schleck, Contador and Cloden was the order over the top. The USA flag will no doubt have spotted Lance Armstrong as they head up to that banner now. And there's an attack here from Nibali. He wants the King of the Mountain points, I guess, and he's going to go over in 5th, and he might try to plunge down, but they're onto him. Van der Velde, Wiggins, Armstrong in that order.
Well, they've got a slight descent now as they move away from the summit of the Col de Rome, and they drop down maybe for about 4 kilometres, and then they start the final ascent up to the summit of the Col de la Colombière, and that is a 7.5 kilometre ascent. And at the top, Phil, the last 5 kilometres are in excess of 10%, and if Armstrong has got the legs, that might be the point where he could jump clear of Wiggins.
So they're over the top of the Col de Rome. It's not the end of the climbs. The Col de la Colombière is slightly shorter at 7 kilometres, but Frank Schleck has put everybody now under pressure.
19 kilometres to go now on stage 17. 4 to the top of the Colombière, 15 down to Le Grand Bornand. And there are 2 groups of 4. Contador, Cloden and the Schleck brothers out front. Wiggins, van der Velde, Nibali and Lance Armstrong a minute 37 behind them.
The pace is visibly accelerated again, and he is applying a little bit more of the tourniquet. More serious face perhaps on Contador, but they don't look as though they're under any problem at all, but they are moving away. It's 1:37 now to the chase group of Wiggins.
3, because Christian van der Velde has finally given his all for his teammate. He's done all of the pacemaking that he can. He mustered all kinds of courage to do that, and now he's just said, Brad, if you want the podium in Paris, you have to now take the responsibility yourself. Wiggins now left on his own to do the tempo in that group behind. This, though, is the big group of the Tour de France this afternoon. L'Étape Arena, the queen of stages that we are witnessing here, and it's the Schleck brothers doing what they promised they would do, Phil. They said, we're going to go into the Alps. The last week of this race is going to be something very special, and it's turning out to be right. Well, quick calculation is currently Lance Armstrong is dropping away from a podium position, because that podium will move onto the shoulders of Andy Schleck with the time gaps as they are. But that's before the individual time trial tomorrow, and I am sure that Lance Armstrong will do a much better time trial than Andy Schleck.
Right now, what's happening here? Contador's moved. He decided to go it alone. Now, can there be a reaction from Andy after all the work that man has done? Contador is now going for the top. He's allowed himself just under 2 kilometres to the summit, and he's going for the win. And he's got a terrific lead so quickly, Paul. And again, Schleck has got to answer. And Frank, what's happened to Andreas?
Well, Andreas Kloden was caught out by that acceleration there. Andy Schleck, now with his brother Frank, has gone off in pursuit of Alberto Contador. Contador testing the waters here this afternoon, but he hasn't got the gap on the two Schleck brothers. He's looking back now to see that he hasn't opened it up, and Andy Schleck has got himself a little bit angry there, and he's pulled himself back to the wheel of the yellow jersey.
Turning out not to be a great move, because they shed the Astana rider. That was how the move went. Kloden looked down at the same time, and it was a terrific acceleration, but that's what this man is famous for, is the acceleration on the mountains. But now all he's done is get rid of his own teammate.
Job we go, they've dropped Kloden in the front. Keep it going, we go, keep it going all the way to the top.
There in the yellow jersey, Alberto Contador is inside of the final kilometre of the Col de la Colombière. All of the work on this climb here has been done by the two Schleck brothers, Andy on the front in the white jersey and Frank in second position. Contador, he looks to me as if he's under a little bit of pressure here this afternoon. He didn't have that zip that he normally has to get out and away from these riders, but these two riders are great alpine climbers. Let's not forget Frank Schleck in second position, a winner a couple of years ago of a great stage up to the summit of the Alpe d'Huez.
Well, you can tell by the pressure going on those pedals now. This is a tough part of that climb here. Swedish flags are flying on the right. He goes through at 1 kilometre. Andreas Kloden, the cars are ahead. He can see them. It must be so frustrating to be just behind and can't quite get on terms.
On we go. Kloden's exploded in the front. He's on his own. 40 seconds behind the others. All the way to the top we go. All the way.
Schleck, Andy that is, could be climbing onto a podium now, and it's all a question of whether he can hang on in the time trial tomorrow, because it should go back to his advantage on 1-1-2, where he can finish off and maybe step up on the podium in Paris. These last few days are dying out, and they're just throwing everyone at Wiggins now. Wiggins is not being able to attack. That's the attack by Armstrong. Wiggins could not react. This is a deja vu from yesterday. Now can Lance Armstrong. He's got to bridge a minute to Andreas Kloden.
Well, he's got to bridge it 2.5 minutes, and he waited until the moment when he thought that Wiggins had absolutely nothing left in those legs of his, and he decided, right, I'm off now. We've got Vincenzo Nibali is trying to get across to Armstrong. Armstrong was waiting for the steepest part of the climb. He wants to be able to ride down this descent on his own and try and bridge as much of that deficit as he can to try and keep himself as close as possible to a podium position in Paris.
Well, this is a brilliant piece of riding by Armstrong. He has played absolutely the team captain and the player for his teammates to go and get the gains. And when they sold everybody down below, he'd always slipped his gear there, but he sorted it out now. And he's now going to try and fly across this gap on his own, as he did yesterday. And he's making it towards the top of the Col de Colombière. Then the plunge down. Lance Armstrong is fighting to hold that second place. We really do have a situation where Astana could become the first team since 1914 to place 3 members of the same team on the podium in Paris.
Well, Andreas Kloden now, Phil, getting to the top of this climb as he summits the Col de la Colombière now. He's looking for 1 minute and 14 seconds on the leading group of 3. Armstrong is scorching up the climb behind him. He is now looking at being the 5th place rider on the road, and he has got nobody with him at all. No more Vincenzo Nibali, no more Bradley Wiggins. He is riding with the cadence that was his from 1999 to 2005. You know, the great thing about a champion is even when you're down sometimes, you can never be out. You can always fight back.
9 miles or 15 kilometres the descent now. Armstrong still on the way up here. He's going to try and reach Kloden if he can on the descent. But the Schleck brothers have been superb, but only Andy Schleck is really gaining. Frank's lost a little bit of time. These boys here from Astana are in a position to wipe out the Tour de France now. Armstrong is free to fly as he comes over the top in 5th place over the Col de Colombière. Now it's a do the zip up and get everybody organised and plunge to the valley below. The Alps are now behind us all. We have just gone under 10 kilometres to go, 9.8 to be precise. These are 3 leaders. Contador saying something here to Andy, and I don't know what he's saying. He might be saying you can have the stage because you're not gaining any time on me. But he may also know that Kloden and Armstrong are coming down this mountain as well.
Well, there's no reason at all for Alberto Contador to get himself a stage victory in this final day over the Alps, but it is important for him to get time over everybody else, and what they were looking to do this afternoon was get time on Bradley Wiggins. He's currently got himself around about a 2-minute buffer now over Bradley Wiggins. Fourth rider on the road, Andreas Kloden, coming around the corner very shortly. He will probably have company, and he'll be in the shape of his own teammate Lance Armstrong, and he probably doesn't even know that yet.
Over the top for this back group here with Mikel Astelosa yesterday saluting the crowd as a winner in Bourg-Saint-Maurice. Today he just wants to get to the finish. And look at this, Nibali has just come up to Lance Armstrong. So Wiggins now has blown, I would think, back there, because Nibali's left him as well, and now there are two chasing Kloden.
Well, there are two chasing Kloden at 30 seconds at 6.2 kilometers to go to the finish. Alberto Contador looks resplendent in yellow. He's taking good lines around these corners, just sitting on the back wheel of Frank Schleck. The Schleck brothers have lived up to their promises to light up the Alps this afternoon.
They started 2:26 and just over 3 minutes overnight, but they're closing in, but not on this rider, because they're going down all together in the same time. Spread across the groups, 1:52 to Kloden, 2:20 to Armstrong and Nibali. We're not getting a time check on the exact location of Bradley Wiggins, but he's behind.
Well, Wiggins could make a daredevil descent. He's a very good bike handler, and he may well be starting to close in on Lance Armstrong and Vincenzo Nibali, although Armstrong was going very fast indeed. Fourth man on the road here, Andreas Kloden, is trying to keep himself in with a chance of a podium position, but he's lost a huge chunk of time.
As we race down 2.5, 3/4 kilometers to go, the Maillot Jaune is in town. The brothers are in front. There's no doubt in my mind now Contador will not contest the sprint. He's been towed to the victory, I would say, in the Tour de France today.
I think he certainly has. He'd opened up the gaps quite massively because of the assault by the Schleck brothers on the slope. So first of all the Col de Rome, and then followed up by the accelerations on the Col de la Colombière. Andy Schleck here, I think, is probably going to try and lead the sprint out for his brother Frank. Frank is a little bit further down in the overall classification, so right now, if I had to go and put some money out, I'd put it onto Frank's shoulders.
Because that's repayment for the work done by Frank when they started the attacks on the Col de Rome. And it carried on to the Col de la Colombière. That'll be 2 kilometers to go. They're up behind our comedy position now on our left side as we look at the pictures where we are. They'll continue to plunge down. Nibali and Lance are still racing here. That will be 4 kilometers to go. They've got a 2-kilometer buffer over these two, and in between is Andreas Kloden.
Well, Nibali coming by now, lifting up the pacemaking once again. I think we're now looking here at the legs of Andreas Kloden, fourth rider on the road. He is looking, though, Phil, for around about 2 minutes to try and pull himself back to those riders. It's a question now of just trying to conserve as much as possible on the eve of the individual time trial tomorrow around Lake Annecy.
The Schleck brothers have continued to take time out of everybody on the way down here, except Alberto Contador. This magical little climber from Spain continues the run of Spanish victories in the Tour de France. Remember, last year it was Carlos Sastre, before it was this man himself, and he's never ridden the race since. Now he's going to reward the hard work with the two riders from Luxembourg as he pats the back of Frank there. He is not going to contest the sprint, that's for sure. And I think Andy will reward brother Frank with a stage win.
I think that's absolutely right there. You can see Frank did all of the pacemaking and set up this move as we come now to 1 kilometer to go to the finish. And I think probably Alberto Contador will not try and get the stage victory, because as far as he's concerned, he's opened up a big gap over all of the other rivals that he had to in this race this afternoon, and he will conserve as much energy as possible for tomorrow's individual time trial.
Well, of course, Andy will move up, but whatever happens, he still remains 2 minutes and 26 seconds behind the man in yellow, and that's all that's important now. Alberto Contador over everybody else has gained time. He's still 2:26 ahead of Andy Schleck, who has tried everything today to climb on the podium in Paris, and when we see the results tonight, he might have slotted in to second or third place. We'll wait for the others to finish. It's the drive for the final day's result, and I don't think Contador will interfere with a celebration for Luxembourg.
Well, on the front, Andy Schleck, he's doing all of the pacemaking. He knows he's going to leave it up to brother Frank there, who is in second place. Contador in third. The team cars all behind now. We're inside of 350 metres to go. And Andy now is starting to wind up the sprint, I think, Phil, for brother Frank.
Well, this is it. The lead out from Bro in white. Where are you, Frank? And he says, I'm on your other shoulder as he comes round the bend for the line now. And Contador is going to ride it out in the back. Frank Schleck, who did his job as a faithful brother and a teammate, has come clear for the win. Or is he? Because Contador is making sure there's no gaps between the bikes, otherwise there'll be a separate time. Andy Schleck has got some power in those legs nonetheless. That doesn't look like the face of a man giving victory, I have to say. But anyway, Frank Schleck gets it, Contador is second, Andy is third. Now, have they done enough?
And how about this for a repeat of 2004, Lance Armstrong coming back up to Andreas Kloden. The last check we got, Phil, was around about the 2-minute mark. He's linked up there with Andreas Kloden. The way he's riding here, it could well just be inside the 2-minute mark on the finishing line. Armstrong here is riding for time ahead of Vincenzo Nibali, and of course right there in third position is his own teammate Andreas Kloden. They are trying to keep themselves close to getting that 1, 2, 3 that they're looking for at the end of the Tour.
Nibali lost ground today on Andy Schleck, of course, in the race for the white jersey. That's probably gone back to Andy. He won it last year as well. He's been racing in it for the last couple of days too. Kloden on the back here. Armstrong being left to drive on. It looks as though Nibali just wants to win the sprint and leave it at that. This will be the sprint for fourth place. Armstrong grits his teeth and tacks onto the back wheel of Vincenzo Nibali. Is he going to have the strength to come out? Remember, there'll be a different time for Kloden because he's let the wheel go, so he'll dock him 1 or 2 seconds. As Nibali now races to the line, Armstrong sees it. Now, is he going to try and jump round Nibali like he once came round Andreas Kloden when they came down into the Grand Bornand? Knowing Lance Armstrong, he's probably just going to sit and cross the line. He'll be in 5th place if that's the way.
Well, Nibali has done a big job of work today to try and keep himself in contact for the white jersey race. And Armstrong, it looks as if he is going to come past Phil to try and grab himself the 4th place on the line.
No,
it's going to be close.
No, he's just been pipped by, he didn't bother to challenge Nibali, but there's a definite time gap to Andreas Kloden. So that will make also a little bit difference to the final calculations. About 5 or 6 seconds it was there.
Well, 9 seconds, in fact, Andreas Kloden was judged to have lost on that dash to the line, but the big gaps were to the front 3. Frank Schleck took the stage on the same time as Alberto Contador and Andy Schleck. Then it was 2 minutes 18 before Vincenzo Nibali and Lance Armstrong came in, having caught and passed Kloden. Bradley Wiggins was 7th, losing 49 seconds to Armstrong on the final descent and 3:07 to the Schlecks and Contador on the day. French television, meanwhile, lost Bradley, or rather threw him away, preferring to cut to an interview with President Sarkozy while the man who started the day 3rd in their national sporting institution was crossing the line. Good job Carla Bruni wasn't on the race, or we might have missed the stage winner. French television's was by far the worst performance of the day, but there were other losers. Christian van der Velde came in almost a minute behind Bradley Wiggins, having sacrificed himself on the Col de Rome for his teammate. Carlos Sastre launched the first attack, but lost 7 minutes 47. And Cadel Evans was paced home by Charlie Wegelius, nearly half an hour down, in a group with Tuhushoft and David Miller. Mark Cavendish finished safely in the autobus. So the stage win to Frank and 2nd place overall for Andy, but the Schlecks couldn't drop Alberto Contador today, and they're running out of chances.
Well, we know it's going to be hard to beat Contador. We agree on that. I mean, it's going to be very, very hard. But hey, we're the only ones who try, and we're going to keep on trying.
And the time trial tomorrow, fancy your chances?
Yeah, it's not gonna be a secret if I tell you that I'm not a specialist in time trial, so I'll probably be gonna lose some time, but it's normal, and I won the stage now, so I'm happy.
Now, Franco Pelizzotti pretty much sewed up the King of the Mountains title today. He's 78 points clear of Egoy Martinez, with only 85 left in the race, so that's a done deal. Same goes for the green jersey. Tuhushov's heroic solo break to mop up the intermediate sprints puts him 30 points ahead of Mark Cavendish, although he pretty much had it won anyway.
You probably didn't have to do that. I mean, you probably had the green jersey sewn up anyway, but you went and did it just, what, for the hell of it? Or were you making a statement?
Maybe making a statement, but now at least I got more points. So if something happened, and I win the jersey by, I don't know, 10 points, then we see, okay, at least I got these points. So, but now I think, but that's not the biggest problem. I just want to have fun up there and get points, be clear to before Champs-Élysées, and it was an amazing day for me.
And another day closer to Paris for Alberto Contador, on a stage that put more time between him and his main rivals, as well as between him and his teammates Andreas Klöden and Lance Armstrong, who wasn't entirely happy with his day.
Well, yes and no. I mean, I just tried to be conservative on Rome, Col de Rome, and I didn't go with those initial attacks, and then I got kind of stuck behind. And once you're 30 seconds back, there's nothing you can do. You got to just sit on. And I was a little concerned with Bradley Wiggins and the TT. So the last K over Colombier, I decided to jump away, but.
You took a minute out of Bradley Wiggins in the final 16, 17 kilometers. You're a minute and 30 seconds behind Andy Schleck. Is that doable in the time trial tomorrow? How do you feel about it?
Well, I don't know. We'll see. I'm going to do my best, and it'd be nice to like I said earlier, it'd be nice to get on the podium. So I'll go as hard as I can and go up the Ventoux as fast as I can. See how it goes.
Me he encontrado muy bien y bueno, al final Wiggins se ha quedado para atrás, pero me queda un sabor bastante agridulce, ¿no? Porque íbamos subiendo la Colombier y le preguntaba a Andreas que si arrancaba y me ha dicho que si yo quería que sí. Y entonces he arrancado pensando que me podía ir solo, ¿no? Y bueno, y he visto que han salido los hermanos Schleck y iban ahí, que se estaba quedando Andreas, ¿no? Y bueno, he decidido parar para ver si entraba otra vez Andreas, y bueno, se ve que le ha dado un bajón o algo, y luego al final se ha dejado mucho tiempo, y bueno, este es el único sabor agridulce, ¿no?, que me queda la etapa.
Interesting attack by Contador, 5K from the top of the Colombier. Did you have any idea what that was all about?
No, I didn't know. I wasn't really paying attention. I was just staying there with Wiggo and with Christian, but I'm going to bite my tongue on that one.
Lance, as ever, letting us know how he feels even when he stays out of things. Here's tonight's much-changed general classification then. Alberto Contador with a lead of 2 minutes 26 over Andy Schleck and 3:25 over Frank. Armstrong is fourth at 3 minutes 55. Andreas Klöden fifth at 4 minutes 44. Bradley Wiggins now sixth at 4:53 ahead of Vincenzo Nibali and his Garmin team leader Christian van der Velde. Carlos Sastre is now 11:39 in arrears. Cadel Evans 37 minutes down. Charlie Bergelius currently lies 60th, David Miller 75th, and Mark Cavendish 141st.